Long before the first dinosaur left its track in the mud, before wings or feathers, before flowers reached for sunlight, the Earth changed. It began with clouds gathering at the edges of the horizon, thin as breath at first, then growing, spreading, darkening. The air thickened with vapor, the sky turned copper, and thunder echoed across a world that was still young enough to tremble. The first drop fell onto dry red soil that had not felt water in centuries, and in that moment, a new age began. The continents were one then, bound together in a single vast land called Pangaea. It stretched from pole to pole, a mosaic of deserts, mountains, and shallow inland seas. Volcanoes burned along its spine, fountains of smoke that turned daylight to dusk. Life clung to the margins along rivers, near lakes, in the shade of ancient conifers. The sun baked the land by day, and by night cold winds swept through canyons of dust. The rulers of this world were not dinosaurs, not yet. They were crocodile-like reptiles called rauisuchians, huge amphibians with toad-like heads, and sleek predators that waded beside shrinking streams. The small, hollow-boned dinosaurs that already existed were little more than background characters in this scene of survival. But beneath the crust, forces stirred. In what is now Western Canada and the Pacific, immense volcanic fields erupted. Carbon dioxide and sulfur filled the atmosphere, trapping heat, disturbing winds, shifting currents of air and sea. The planet began to sweat. The cycle of evaporation and condensation grew violent, and the balance that had held the Triassic world steady for tens of millions of years collapsed. Rain came gentle first, then relentless. It poured for seasons, for centuries, for generations without end. The climate itself had turned into a storm. Day after day, the world drowned. Rivers burst their banks, washing away entire ecosystems. Dunes dissolved into clay. Forests swelled and thickened until light barely reached the ground. The air was heavy, smelling of resin and decay, filled with the hiss of constant water. Lightning stitched the clouds. Thunder rolled over flooded plains. The temperature fell, rose, and fell again in chaotic rhythm. Creatures adapted to dryness found no refuge. Their eggs waterlogged, their food rotted, their bodies weakened. The great amphibians suffocated in low-oxygen swamps. The giant rauisuchians slipped and starved as the land beneath them turned to mire. They had been shaped for sun and dust. The new world belonged to rain. Through this chaos moved the small dinosaurs. Slender, light, and fast, they crossed ground that swallowed heavier creatures. Their lungs were more efficient, their bones airy yet strong. They climbed where others sank. They hunted in brief clearings, feeding on insects and lizards displaced by the flood. Each generation changed a little more, growing larger, stronger, better suited to endurance. In the endless gray of the Carnian skies, the ancestors of the giants were learning how to live. The landscape transformed beyond recognition. Where deserts had been, jungles rose dense forests of ferns, horsetails, and early seed plants. The color of the world shifted from rust red to deep green. The soundscape changed too. The constant patter of rain, the rush of streams, the calls of new insects. Volcanoes continued to erupt beneath the storms, adding ash to the downpour, fertilizing the soil. Life responded with explosive growth. Plants spread across continents. Rivers carried nutrients to newly formed deltas. The earth, flooded and shaken, had become a vast greenhouse. Within this hot, wet cradle, evolution accelerated. The first turtles glided through still pools. Tiny mammals, no larger than mice, darted beneath the roots of ferns. Insects diversified, their wings iridescent in the dim light. The smell of damp vegetation and volcanic sulfur mingled in the air. Lightning flashed almost every afternoon, illuminating silhouettes of new creatures emerging from the mist. The rain never ceased, but life refused to die. It adapted, twisting itself into forms that could breathe water, endure mud, and move through shadow. Millions of years passed this way. To the planet, time was a slow exhale. To life, it was revolution. Every drop of water was a test, every flood, an experiment. The survivors were not the strongest, but the most flexible. When the storms stripped away one layer of existence, another took its place. And in that natural selection, the small dinosaurs flourished. Their bones grew larger, their muscles stronger, their steps more confident. They spread across Pangaea, from the humid equator to the temperate south. When the sky finally began to brighten, they were ready for sunlight. The rains left behind a changed planet. Once the atmosphere cleared, temperatures rose again. swamps retreated, leaving behind deep soils and vast floodplains. Vegetation, now thick and lush, captured carbon and cooled the air. The balance of the biosphere had been reset. In the absence of the old rulers, dinosaurs expanded into every empty niche. Herbivores evolved to reach higher branches and run on open ground. Carnivores grew long legs and sharp senses to follow them. Within a few million years of the final storm, the first great herds thundered across the Triassic plains. What had been small and obscure now defined the future. When humans finally uncovered their bones, the record of this transformation was written in stone. In cliffs and mountains that once lay at the bottom of prehistoric rivers, layers of rock told the story in perfect sequence. Beneath the layers of mudstone were fossils of amphibians and reptiles that vanished with the deluge. Above them lay bones and footprints of the earliest true dinosaurs. Between those worlds ran a band of clay rich in microscopic fossils of water-loving plants, evidence of constant rain. In the minerals themselves, scientists found traces of chemical shifts, spikes of carbon, sulfur, and oxygen, isotopes that revealed the scale of the event. The planet's own chemistry testified to its convulsion. From the Dolomites of northern Italy to the red cliffs of Arizona, from China's Yunnan province to Argentina's high plains, the same layer appears. It is the signature of the Carnian Pluvial episode, the time when the sky opened and did not close. Each discovery added to a picture of a world that drowned, survived, and began anew. For paleontologists, it became clear that without this storm, dinosaurs might have remained small and scattered, just one branch among many. Instead, they became the architects of the Mesozoic world. The science revealed more than fossils. It uncovered the rhythm of the planet itself. Volcanic eruptions had set the stage, but feedback loops of carbon and water sustained the storm. As carbon dioxide increased, temperatures rose, oceans evaporated, and rain intensified. The more it rained, the more carbon was drawn from the air by plants and trapped in soils, until the system began to cool again. The storm ended not with an explosion, but with balance restored. The Earth had found a new equilibrium, cleansed by its own deluge. The cost, however, was immense. Entire ecosystems vanished. Coral reefs dissolved in acidified seas. Marine reptiles that once dominated coastal waters disappeared. On land, half of all known species went extinct. The Triassic world had been pruned by nature's own hand. Yet in that devastation lay opportunity. Where old life failed, new lineages rose, filling the gaps left behind. The aftermath of destruction was not silence, but innovation. When the rains finally ceased, sunlight returned to a transformed stage. Mist lifted from valleys, revealing landscapes glistening with youth. Rivers carved new paths through soft earth, leaving behind fertile plains. Plants spread faster than ever, feeding herbivores that grazed in endless herds. Predators followed, sleek and balanced, moving with precision. The dinosaurs that had survived the age of rain now ruled the age of Sunday. They were not invincible, only exquisitely adapted to the world the storm had made for them. Over time, their dominance shaped the planet's appearance. Forests opened into savannas under the pressure of grazing giants, the atmosphere filled with oxygen from the vast green canopy. Insects grew larger. Birds began to evolve from small feathered hunters, and mammals retreated to the shadows, waiting for another turn. Every heartbeat of that new age could trace its ancestry to the 2 million years when the world drowned. Today, those years are invisible to the casual eye, but their memory lies hidden beneath our feet. Walk along a canyon wall in Arizona, and you will see the shift in color, red stone fading to gray, then to deep greenish clay. That transition marks the line where the rain began. Touch it, and you touch the boundary between eras. In the Dolomites, the same pattern appears, a silent echo across half the world. The Earth remembers its transformations in texture and hue. Scientists continue to read these pages of stone, deciphering the story of climate and survival. They find fossilized raindrops, tiny dimples preserved in ancient mud, each one a record of a single moment in the downpour. Some are so well defined that you can see the splash where the drop struck, frozen forever in time. These marks are not just curiosities. They are punctuation in the planet's long narrative, reminders of the millions of hours when water wrote its signature on the surface of the world. And if you listen during a quiet storm today, when rain falls steadily on soil and leaves, the sound is familiar. It is the same rhythm that once drummed on the backs of reptiles and ferns that shaped the bones of creatures destined to rule. The physics have not changed, only the witnesses have. Water still binds sky and earth, still carries memory in its endless cycle. Every raindrop is ancient, recycled countless times since that Triassic flood. In every storm, a trace of that first deluge returns. The lesson of the long rain is not only about extinction or evolution, it is about endurance. The world remade itself through patience. It did not burn everything at once, it wore itself down, softened by its own persistence. Water, not fire, was the sculptor of destiny. The dinosaurs' triumph was not an act of conquest, but of survival through adaptability. They did not inherit the Earth because they were strong, but because they could change. When humans speak of cataclysm, they imagine endings. The Earth, however, speaks in renewals. The Carnian rain was not the world's death, but its deep breath before rebirth. From that breath came forests, creatures, and futures no one could have foreseen. Each droplet that fell carried the blueprint of tomorrow. Even now, in every rainforest thunderstorm, the planet reenacts that ancient cycle. Carbon rises, clouds form, rain falls, life grows, balance returns. We live in a stable climate only because those storms once raged. The soil that feeds our crops was born in their floods. The oxygen we breathe is the inheritance of their aftermath. We walk through the legacy of 2 million years of rain every day, though we no longer remember its beginning. Imagine standing on Pangaea during the height of that storm. The air would press against your skin like warm mist. The horizon would vanish in fog. Thunder would roll so constantly that silence would seem unnatural. The ground would tremble with each eruption, yet above the noise you would hear another sound, the slow heartbeat of water-shaping stone. In that endless moment, the seeds of the future were already germinating beneath the mud, unseen and unstoppable. When the last clouds finally drifted away and the sun touched the drenched land, the first dinosaurs raised their heads toward the light. Their eyes reflected a world reborn. The rivers glittered, the ferns unfurled, and steam rose from the cooling earth. They stepped forward into an age that was theirs alone, unaware that the sky had given them their crown. The story of the long rain ends not with thunder, but with quiet. The floods receded, leaving behind layers of memory. Life moved on, carrying the imprint of transformation within its genes. And though millions of years have passed, the Earth still carries that rhythm. It is there in the cycle of monsoons, in the green surge after a storm, in the way water gathers, falls, and rises again. The rain that lasted 2 million years is gone, yet its echo remains in every drop that falls today. It reminds us that creation often comes disguised as ruin, that what seems like an ending may only be the planet's way of beginning again. When we watch rain slide down glass or listen to its steady hum on roofs and trees, we are hearing the oldest memory of all the memory of a world learning to live through change. The Earth remembers, and through its remembrance we glimpse ourselves. Fragile, adaptable, transient, and enduring all at once. The storm that gave birth to the dinosaurs also gave us a lesson written in water. That survival is not resistance, but transformation. From storm to sunlight, from ruin to rain, the long rain carved the path of life. And in its rhythm, life continues still.